Okay, in your journal, there's a little section here on understanding the healing crisis and detoxification. And this is something I think is really, really important for you to understand. We have essentially been trained to believe that symptoms are not good, right? So symptoms are simply an indication by your body that there's an underlying challenge that's going on. So I always tell people it's kind of like the check engine light going on in your car. The check engine light's not the problem, it's just a signal that there is something going on. And so last thing you're going to do is probably tape a piece of cardboard over that check engine light and ignore it. Now, some of you might, obviously, but I would ask you this. If you went to a mechanic and that mechanic made that suggestion, you said, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Mechanic, driving my car, my check engine light came on, and he or she said to you, I get it, that's an annoying light. Hey, here's a piece of cardboard, tape it over it, you won't see it, problem taken care of. Well, many of you wouldn't do that, obviously. You would go find a mechanic that would help you solve the problem of why the check engine light came on. The same thing applies when you start thinking about symptoms. Symptoms are an indicator of some sort of underlying functional issue, okay? And so for many of you that have been in the model of symptom chasing, symptom care, disease management, whatever it is, you've been given drugs and chemicals to try to manage those symptoms. The other reality is you may not be on any drugs, but we live in a very toxic world now. The foods that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the personal care products that we use, the pans that we cook in, all that stuff is releasing toxins that get into our bodies. And when there becomes this point of toxic overwhelm for the body, it becomes very difficult for the body to remove those toxins, so they get stored in the body's tissues. One of the main tissues that toxins are stored in are the fat tissue, okay, the adipose tissue. And so as we begin to burn fat and detoxify, then what's going to happen is those toxins are going to be released from the tissues, the fat cells and other tissues of the body. They're going to be moved into the circulatory system to ultimately be removed by the body. So as you begin this process of detoxification and the body starts to unload these toxins, there's going to be a period of time where you're more toxic. In other words, you're going to feel sick, like you got the flu. You're going to get headaches, muscle aches, joint aches. You might get diarrhea. You might not just feel like yourself. You might feel like you want to go to bed. You're so tired. That's called a healing crisis. The body, in other words, is getting rid of these toxins. And while you're at a more toxic level, you're not going to maybe feel the greatest. Now, there are some people who this healing crisis is literally going to be a blip on the radar. In other words, they aren't going to really feel any of it. They're not going to feel much at all. They may just feel a little fatigue or just not great one day, and then all of a sudden, man, they feel better than they felt in forever. And then there's others who have a little bit more of a health challenge, or they've been on more drugs than another person, or whatever it may be. They've eaten a lot of processed foods and fast foods, and they've used a lot of things that just have not been good for the body. That healing crisis may be a little bit longer for that individual. And they may actually go through ebbs and flows. In other words, you have a few days where you don't feel very good, and then you feel fantastic. And then, a few days later, you're fatigued and you're a little bit tired. The body may be dumping more toxins. So the concept of understanding this idea of the healing crisis as it relates to detoxification and healing in general is really important. So make sure that you read this. And if you have any questions on the healing crisis, let us know. If the healing crisis becomes intense for you to the point where you don't feel good, let us know. There's ways that we can tweak or manage that to help you to get through it, okay? But, during the healing crisis, your symptoms may go up. So, try to avoid using over-the-counter drugs or other drugs to try to manage those symptoms, because a lot of times they're just pushing those toxins back in or pushing those symptoms back in when the body in reality is trying to express them and get them out so that it can heal and feel well. And when you're in that point of being detoxified and cleaning out, boy, you're going to feel good, okay? So that's the healing crisis. Make sure you understand it, and if you have any questions on it, let us know.